Hello everyone. I don't normally record things like this, videos like this, because normally I find it difficult to say what I want to say on a camera, or I guess microphone. But I felt quite passionate about this topic as I was thinking about it. After playing a bunch of Survivor games and playing a bunch of Hunter games. Let me just introduce myself quickly because I don't really post IDV content on this channel anymore. Hello, my name is Zach. I am a former top hunter. I am a S badge full scored. I'm an S badge feaster. I used to be an A badge geisha. I used to be an A badge night watch. I used to be an A badge fucking I don't know Lucino. I used to be an A badge Lucino. Point is, I'm a Hydra hunter. I'm a high tier player. And I think I understand the game pretty well from a balance perspective. My view on the meta isn't exactly I would say pinpoint nowadays. A lot of it is very biased considering the hunters I play. But one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is kind of a balance philosophy that I think is shared with quite a lot of other games, but especially Identity 5. I'm going to just start by prefacing this by talking about the ban system, right? IDV has a ban system. As a hunter, you can ban 2 survivors up until, I think, tier 7. Oh, no, sorry. No. You can ban 2 survivors from tier 5. That's how they changed it. You can ban 2 survivors from tier 5, and then survivors can ban 1 hunter, and then 2 hunters from, I believe, tier 7. That is all well and good, right? Ban systems are great. They allow you to counter certain niches that you don't want in your game, right? That is the point of a ban system. You want to ban a survivor, or a hunter rather, or either one really, to prevent a specific niche from happening in your game that your hunter or survivor struggles to deal with, right? So, for example, if you want to ban Priestess, you want to stop a Priestess from abusing the bridge on Moonlit, or stopping them from abusing the bridge, the buildings on Eversleeping, right? Or, for example, you want to ban Seer because you don't want your first chase to be more than 60 seconds, ideally, and you want to prevent a strong rescue. For example, if you're like a Poland, you want to stop a rescue happening from 2 spikes, because they can get owled, things like that, right? You ban survivors so that specific niches are being countered, right? And for the most part, this works well, right? Take, for example, characters like Harassers, right? Like Antiquarian, Batter, Forward, Wildling, and Cowboy are the ones that come to mind, right? Every single one of them fills a different kind of niche that I promise I'll get onto Rescuers, because I know the titles about it, but all of them fulfill a different niche, right? Antiquarian is strong in tight areas, and she's countered by hunters, or she counters hunters with bad hitboxes, right? And she counters hunters without ways to reliably get to them in the open. For example, she destroys Fool's Gold because Fool's Gold has no way to really get to her, and she can really reliably just waste a lot of time. Batter is a different than Antiquarian in the fact that he doesn't need walls, but at the same time that he can't really stun lock people. He's also a weaker cutter on his own and has lower decoding, right? So these characters trade one thing for another, and then when you ban one of them, then you're preventing a certain niche from happening that the other can't fill, right? Forward, in a way, combines both of them, but also has much weaker decode, and then also has much less resources than the other two, right? Like, Forward can get less stuns off than an Antiquarian can, or like a Batter has technically infinite, unless the cricket balls get broken. So he trades one thing for another, and also Forward is much more difficult to really make work at a high level. Actually, yeah, that's arguable, but the point is that all 3 of them fulfill different niches, right? And then Wildling also does this. Wildling is kind of similar to Batter, but they have key differences that allow one hunter to counter the other, right? And then also you have map differences. Like, Antiquarian is much better than Batter on, say, Church, but she's worse than Batter on, say, Eversleeping, I would argue, right? Well, in a solo queue environment. I don't know about tournament environments. This is purely solo queue, right? Like rank queue. With all this being said, right, the point that I'm trying to make is that in terms of harassers, all of them have certain niches and all of them have certain counters that make you want to ban a certain harasser over another one, right? Like, you would ban Batter if you're playing Poland, because Batter has a 100-0 matchup against Poland. But if you're a feaster, then you'd much rather face a Batter than an Antiquarian. And then there's also map differences that come into play, right? So when you ban one of them, you're destroying a certain niche that can be in your game in replacement for another one, right? Decoders also all have a niche. They're a little bit less defined than certain harassers, but each decoder has a different thing that they do well, right? Like Lawyer is fantastic at rotating, and he's very good at in large buildings like factory and main building hospital and so on. Mines is basically just Lawyer, but like more risky. So if you wanted to ban mines, say she was like buffed and she like wasn't shit, right? Say you wanted to ban mines, like you would probably have a Lawyer be played instead that does her job, but significantly slower, but also less risky, right? That's fine. That's fine from a game design standpoint, because what you're doing is that you're preventing that worst case outcome of a Mind's Eye just cypher rushing you in replacement for a lower risk Lawyer pick, right? That's fine. Composer does something completely different than the other two, in which case that he doesn't exactly know your location all the time, but he's a much stronger transitional kiter than the other two, right? And also like arguably a tight kiter than Mind's Eye because of his pallet port speed, right? Prisoner does something completely different. He's a niche that can't be fulfilled by any other survivor, and the fact that he can just sit in main building and chill. Like he can sit in like hospital, or he can sit in like factory, and he can help like harassers finish their ciphers while not moving from that god area, right? That's the niche that Prisoner fills. And then his stun also complements that, because it allows him to get distance in these god areas that he can abuse, right? So that's why Prisoner is so much better on maps like hospital or Leo's memory, because he can abuse those areas well, right? So again, all of these decoders that I've just mentioned, they all do like relatively similar things, but they all have different ways of doing them that different hunters can counter in different ways, right? So if you're playing like a Fool's Gold or a Mary, then you have a lot less trouble dealing with a Prisoner in main building than someone like a Feaster or like a Ripper or something like that, right? But at the same time, if you're playing like a hunter that's really fast at rotating, then you can deal with a Lawyer really easily. But if you're playing a really slow hunter, then Lawyer might be a much more of an issue, and it might be worth a ban to get rid of that niche, right? There's these kinds of all of the survivors have differences in their gameplay that warrant one ban over another, because that's what bans are designed to do. They're designed to get rid of a certain niche in the game that you don't want to deal with. I'm just reiterating this point by going through every single class. Supports all do completely different things. If you compare Priestess and Female Dancer, right? Priestess is a lot stronger on areas where there's a lot of walls, where there's a lot of heavy areas that she can abuse, right? So, for example, Dancer is better than Priestess on arms. Like, she just is. Dancer can take mid, and she can control mid, she can lock down mid, and then anyone can rotate there in the map and then waste a lot of time for the hunter, right? And Dancer is a better pick on arms than Priestess, arguably. But on Moonlit or Eversleeping, it's not even close. I mean, Dancer is like not even that bad on Eversleep, because she can still control mid with those like multiple pallet areas around middle. But because Priestess is so much stronger in just transitioning across the map because of the large portions of the map that are covered by walls, Priestess is a better pick than Dancer on those maps, and therefore she warrants a ban more. But like Dancer would warrant a ban on arms more than Priestess. You're not going to ban Dancer, but that's not the point. The point is that because of the game design, certain characters are better on certain maps than others, and certain survivors do different things than other survivors that warrant bans over different survivors. That's how ban systems work. That's how you want to be drafting things, right? And then characters like Seer completely break the mold, do something completely different, and then might warrant a ban in its own regard, compared to a Priestess or a Dancer or other supports like a Cowboy or something like that, right? Like these characters all do different things. They all do different niches. They all do things that would warrant a ban over another survivor, right? Now, kiters suffer from this a little bit in the fact that they're a bit samey, but all of them do different things in their kites that make them different and make them warrant a certain ban over another. For example, Acro is really strong around god windows, right? Things like Moonlit 2-story, or things like Factory Window, or Leo's Memory Factory Window, or even like Arms Factory Window, right? Or like the area in Arms in the top right of the map where there's like those two windows that you can fuck around with, and then like the two god palettes, right? Acro is really good in those areas because he can white bomb through the windows, or he can firebomb to transition to them, and he can just force you to walk through his bombs. So in which case you might want to ban Acro if you're on that map, or if you're facing, or if you're playing a hunter that struggles with that, right? On the other hand, Barmaid is really good at transition kiting. So and also it counters certain hunters like Dream Witch, right? So you want to be banning Barmaid on maps that she can abuse or like hunters she can abuse. And then Perfumer is good against tight kiting and characters that can only hit with normal attacks, things like the Mary, things like the Wu Chang, things like that, right? Those are the kind of survivors that Perfumer thrive against. These kiters, they all do different things, right? I could go through a list of every single one of them. Let me pull one up. Like, for example, like, even Thief. Thief is good against characters like Geisha, right? And Magician is good against characters that can only normal attack, like Wu Chang, Mary, Geisha, things like that. Who else is there? Perfumer, I've already mentioned. Seer, again, is good against characters that can only normal swing, and Chip Hunters would tend to not want to ban characters like that. Enchantress is good against Chip Hunters and is good against tight kiting. Norton is good for both transitional kiting and tight kiting, and also works as a harasser. Yeah, very cool survivor. Sorry, I'm not meant to be talking about balance. I'm meant to be talking about design philosophy in this video. I just do not like this character at all. But you see my point, right? Different kiters are countered by different hunters, right? And different hunters counter different kiters, and then different maps are better for different kiters. They all fulfill a niche. They are all good in certain areas. They're all good against certain hunters. They're all good on certain maps, and therefore you would always warrant a ban over one over the other in a certain situation, right? With all that being said, we move on to rescuers, right? We have like the primary ones are mercenary, first officer, gravekeeper, and like sort of journalist. But not really, right? And then Kawad doesn't count. Kawad is not a fucking rescuer. She's a kaya, right? But take a look at all of these survivors, right? A journalist breaks the mold a little bit, but in terms of mercenary, first officer, and gravekeeper, they all do literally the same thing. They all walk towards the chair. They all either try to prevent a hit or block a hit. And then they all try and rescue with the 3 hit states that they have, right? Because all of them have 3 hit states. Like, Mercenary can tank 2 instances of damage. First Officer can tank as many as he wants for 5 seconds. And Gravekeeper can tank 6, as long as you don't jump out of shovel, right? Merc can tank 4, but then also he can't get downed unless he takes 5. But he trades that for mobility, right? And, you might look at, like, these survivors and think, like, oh, they have differences between them. They have different things that they're doing when they're rescuing. But not really. Like, all of them do the exact same thing. Like, if you ban a mercenary, you just pick first officer. If you ban first officer, you just pick merc. If you ban both mercenary and first officer, you pick gravekeeper. Like, and if you somehow ban all 3 of them, then you just pick journalist, right? Like, all 4 of them do the exact same thing in different ways, and it breaks the mold of the game in a way that you can't really ban to counter rescuers. Like, rescuers are meant to be a niche on their own, right? They're meant to be something that no other survivor can really reliably do. Of course, like, other survivors are, like, decent at it, right? Like, Patient and so on and so forth, right? Like, Patient's a pretty good rescuer. Acro is okay if you get your firebomb to connect. Perfume is fine, things like that, right? But all of them both have limited resources, and also they're better in kites, and then also they are all predictable in the way that they do things, right? But Mercenary, First Officer, and Gravekeeper, they all do the exact same thing in the case that if you ban 2 of them, you just pick another. And I think that is the inherent problem with the Rescuer class, right? All of them have the exact same gameplay loop. They all try to prevent you from hitting them or block them from hitting you, and then they go in and they rescue, and the point of them is that they're meant to be like a really bad chase by the start of the game because, like, good luck chasing a mercenary, or First Officer just wastes 30 seconds by existing, or Gravekeeper can block 2 hits, right? And then Journalist can, like, I don't even know how her ability works in terms of recharge, but, like, she blocks, like, a number of hits if you play it right? And then also gets, like, a speed boost and doesn't give presence. Like, the point of these characters is that they're bad chases at the start of the game, and then you don't want to chase them, and then they end up rescuing, but they trade that for slower decoding, right? That's it. All 4 of them do the same thing, and that's what I think is the issue. All of these other classes, all the different characters have different niches and different things that they're good at, and, like, Mercenary, First Officer, Gravekeeper, and sort of generalists, they all do the same thing. They have very slight niches in between them, but that's mostly just down to balancing and not down to character design, right? Like, Mercenary is the best rescuer conceptually, but that's not because he's like well designed or like he's designed in a different way. Like, it's just because his ability happens to combine well with the meta that's just like there. Like, it's a balancing issue. It's not a design philosophy thing. It's balancing, and it's bad. It's because you don't want your character's niches to be defined by how strong they are in the meta, right? In a perfect world, you ban the survivors that counter your hunter, right? Like, in a perfect world, Joseph will be banning Doctor every game, or Poland will be banning Batter every game, or whatever other hard counters there are. Like Mary would be banning Perfumer every game, right? But that's not the case, because we're stuck banning these meta survivors because they just have a better niche than other people in the same class. And of course, like, characters like Seer, I think, are a whole can of worms on their own in terms of solo queue balancing. I'm not speaking in terms of tournament, by the way. Like, I am not educated in tournament play. This is all for solo queue and rank purposes, and this is like high tier rank. Not tournament, which is a completely different game. Like, just game environment as a whole. But here's my kind of point that I want to make, right? And here's what I've been like ranting about for the past 15 minutes. If you ban Mercenary, then they pick First Officer. If you ban First Officer, they pick Mercenary. If they ban both of them, they pick Gravekeeper or Journalist. That's the ideal way to play Identity 5, and that's why I think Rescuers are badly designed, right? That's the kind of point that I want to make here. That's kind of what I wanted to rant about a little bit. And I think in games that have a ban system, all characters should have a different inherent role that caused them to get banned over another survivor, right? I could go into a lot more detail about it, but I don't want to sit here like talking for an hour about like the the balance philosophy of like this fucking niche Chinese mobile game. But I suppose I just wanted to end on a note that I've kind of explained how all of the classes function in IDV, and how Rescuers are just a inherently poorly designed role. I think Journalist is a step in the right direction in the fact that she's sort of unique in the way that she rescues. But it does still boil down to the same gameplay loop of run to chair and try to block / dodge hit and then rescue, and then be bad chase at start of the game, and then be strong chase throughout the entire game, but also have slower decode. Like, they all do the same thing, and if you ban one of them, they pick another depending on who's the most meta at the time, right? And I think that needs to be changed. I think Rescuers need to be reworked in some manner that makes them unique on certain maps from one another. I don't have an exact conclusion for you, because I kind of just like started recording this on a whim after a rank session, because I was kind of intrigued by the topic as I started thinking about it a little more. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. In conclusion, Rescue is a shit design. All of them do the same thing, and Netease fucking suck. Okay, not really. Like, the game balance has actually been like pretty decent over these past few releases, you could say. But yes, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening for me ranting for 20 minutes. It actually has just hit 20 minutes. Okay, right. I'm gonna do literally anything else with my evening. Thank you for watching. Good night.